Coming to you this week from the Vienna Inn in Vienna, Virginia. It's the Fairfax Sports Report. My name is Greg Wyszynski of the Connection Newspapers, and along with me this evening we've got Jeffrey Graham of the Connection Newspapers and Joseph Kamide of the Connection Newspapers, and we are all here to talk to you about high school sports in general, specifically girls and boys basketball and a myriad of other topics here on the Fairfax Sports Report. Boys, I guess the first topic at hand is snow. Finally snow. Can you believe it?
Oh, you can definitely believe it, and it's like remember you used to go to the amusement park and used to love to jump on the bumper cars?
Jump? What do you mean jump on the bumper?
Jump in and ride around the bumper cars. That's what it is out here. These people, my family's from upstate New York, so we know how to drive around in the snow. You get people around here, you get a couple inches of snow, and you think that it's the blizzard of the century that came through here.
I know. Well, but it's like bumper cars, but you don't have that great staticky electricity smell that comes with, unless cars short out.
Sure, and you don't get yelled at when you hit something.
Right.
Well, I guess you would get yelled at.
Right. But you can sit between your parents' legs if you're too young to ride the ride. I think, right? Before we get going with the fun and games, we want to thank all of the folks that make this thing possible every week. Of course, we're talking about our fabulous underwriters, Quality Care Ford Service Center, servicing all makes and models. 703-383-6299, and of course, CCI Screen Printing for all of your screen printing needs, Jeff Graham. 703-978-0257, and of course the Vienna Inn, which is a fabulous establishment. This is my first time here. I love it. Maple Avenue, Vienna, 703-978-0257, the Vienna Inn, and we're going to be back here, I think, next week as well.
Absolutely.
And that's a good development.
Eating some chili dogs.
There you go. Hey, and no shame in that, right?
Absolutely.
If you don't love that, there's no love in you. Anyways, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. Let's get right to it. Before we get into the high school stuff, we always like to kind of clue in everybody as to what the newsroom debate is. We always banter back and forth during the week and that sort of fun stuff. This week, I think the hottest topic was the Washington Nationals hats. Because you're looking to buy one, right?
Yeah, I'm looking to buy one. My birthday's next week, so I've got orders out with everybody. I think I'm going to have about 3 hats by the end of next week, all Nationals hats. Different styles. They have the red, you have the blue, you have the alternative hats that you can find online. There's a good lot of them.
One of the editors at the paper has this bitchin' blue hat with a white W on the front, which I think I guess it's the road hat. But to me, it's light years better than the red hat they came out with. Do you agree, or do you like the red cap?
I think the red's kind of loud, to be honest with you, to have on a ball cap.
Yeah.
I mean,
What do you think?
The Red Sox, never been a big fan.
Well,
the Cardinals,
being a
never
Mets
been big
fan, I'm always partial to blue, so.
Yeah, but not a light powdery blue. This is a dark, deep navy blue.
It's decent, it's better than the Orioles hat, I'm not going to see too many of those.
I don't think anyone's going to argue with that. But to me, it's like the red and with the white lettering is sort of St. Louis to me. That's like St. Louis's thing. It's been St. Louis's thing for years and years and years and years. The blue with the white, to me, and with the little red trim, to me, is pretty sharp and pretty original. I don't know. Just to me, I would have gone with that hat all the way.
I agree.
All right. As long as we're all in agreement.
I think the red may be a nod to the old Senators hats, though, because they had those in red as well.
Well, there you go. And who wouldn't want to nod back to those winning years?
Absolutely.
Here in BC sports history. Anyways, before we get to the basketball, let's briefly touch on the Northern Virginia Scholastic Hockey League. Now, this is a league that's been around for a few years. And we've covered it in our paper since its inception, and we've actually covered a lot of the backroom stuff, the battles with the Fairfax County Public School System to kind of get recognition. And we're at a point now where there are 2 tiers of teams, there are 4 divisions of teams, there are tons and tons of local high schools that have teams. Some schools like Madison and Marshall have combined teams, Woodson and West Potomac have combined teams. But I keep on saying schools, but that's the thing. Like 4 or 5 years into this thing, the schools still don't officially recognize the league. Now, there have been some inroads, like Woodson, for example, can advertise their games in the PTA newsletter. But even though they won this Gigundo trophy at this tournament in December, they couldn't present it to the athletic director in a pep rally. It's sort of this back and forth thing. Do you think we'll ever see a day when ice hockey is accepted as sort of in that same vein that crew is?
Not here.
No, you don't think so?
No, it's too expensive. And right now you have non-revenue sports like wrestling, field hockey, and some other sports that are struggling. They're struggling to get numbers out. And those are established sports that have been around for decades in this area. So you're not going to get hockey supported by the schools.
You can't even get support professionally. Greg. So I mean, I don't know. I don't know how it's going to work. The one thing I do like about the league is you see a lot of different teams from different counties.
Right.
As we look at the standings, Hilton is in first place. A couple of the teams out in Loudon are doing really well, and Langley's leading the Liberty Patriot. So you're seeing a lot of kids from different counties, but they meet on the ice, and they seems like it seems like a good thing. You get a lot of kids involved. I know it's an expensive sport. We're in an expensive county, so I mean it can exist. I don't know if you're going to get the type of support from the schools you're gonna want.
There's only two things I'll say coming off your comments about the sport. And I think it's important to say that when people in the county say they don't think that hockey belongs as a public school club sport, it's not a slight to the sport. I think a lot of people take it as a slight to the sport, and mostly they're just saying, hey, there are a lot of concerns about insurance, about travel, about this, that, and the other thing, and it's not necessarily that people in the county don't want to have hockey as a sport. The two things that I think that are interesting, you talk about the cost of it, most of these teams are self-sufficient right now, and the people who can afford it are playing it. But like you said, where you get into trouble is, what if you have a kid in a school who wants to play a club sport, can't afford it? Does everybody on the team pitch in to give them equipment? Is there a fund in the league to kind of subsidize? I mean, that's a whole other issue. And then the other thing, of course, is the thing that all the hockey people talk about, which is ice time.
Right.
I mean, you're basically looking at Prince William, Reston, and there's another one, I think. Mount Vernon, I think, has an ice house as
Right.
well. And there's a very limited number of sheets of ice that you can have, and a very limited time you get on those sheets of ice to
and
play.
none of which are under really the schools.
Right. You're buying it, basically.
Guidance. So
And I've heard from a number of these hockey people this season that they've actually had to turn teams away because there simply wasn't enough ice time for them. Now, what could change everything is if the Capitals go ahead and build this thing in Boston, this practice facility in
Who?
Arlington. The hockey team. Played for a cup 1 year, didn't
they-
really win a game, but
Okay.
yeah, okay. So they're building this thing in Boston, this practice facility. And if they ever get it built, then all of a sudden you're talking about a bunch of sheets of ice, not only in Northern Virginia, but in Arlington. And I mean, you do have a team in Arlington right now, a Yorktown, Washington League kind of combination team, and you also, I think, have a couple other teams within that area. So that could change a lot of things if they ever get around to building that.
It could change a lot of things with regards to travel.
Right.
It still doesn't do anything for the expense of the sport.
True.
And the schools, whereas they might say that's a good step in the right direction, that's definitely not going to persuade any schools
Right.
to throw their support behind hockey.
But say this for hockey, you got to agree with this. It's more co-ed than football.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
But you can't mess with football. Football is the drawing card.
Oh,
Football
right.
is the revenue sport.
Right.
Football supports a lot of the other sports within schools. That's where a lot of these schools get their revenue, and that's how a lot of these field hockey jerseys and lacrosse jerseys and softball jerseys, that's where they come from.
Right.
right.
And also a sewing machine. Right.
There you go.
Everybody likes to have a reason to go out to the rink. I just wanted to quickly spotlight a couple people who are having a great season in the Northern Virginia Scholastic Hockey League. Jeremy Schlielbaum is the kid's name. He's on Robinson. He's got 23 points this season. William Day is a player for Madison Marshall. He's got 20 points this season. And Brad Surdam, he's on Springfield. He's got 19 points this season. So there's a couple of kids you can watch out for. And then it's NVSHL. There we go.
Remember the
It'd be
Scholastic
pretty good
part.
to get it right if I got that. That's the website. Google it.
And if we
Just
don't have
Google it.
professional hockey, maybe these kids can be some of the.
Replacement
That's
players,
right.
fantastic.
Who knows?
Yeah, I prefer replacement player to Scab personally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, let's go to basketball now. And what a week it was in basketball, boys. Let's take a look at some of the scores from this week's basketball games. And it really was sort of a topsy-turvy week in a number of ways. And I think it's safe to say that we're starting to get a good sense of where we are when it comes to some of these district races. For example, just throwing this out here, Annandale and West Potomac. I mean, Annandale beats West Potomac. West Potomac is a team that's given a lot of people a lot of trouble. Annandale now is starting to show themselves as a real contender in the Patriot. Chantilly over Centerville. Is this a surprise, the margin of victory here, boys?
A little bit. I mean, Chantilly's kind of been playing up and down. They had a nice win over Oakton, and then Chantilly had a bad loss after that. But then they beat Herndon, who most people think is a top 3 team in the region, and then they have a real close game against Centerville. So Chantilly's a young team, so it's hard for them to put out the same consistent effort night after night. But I mean, it's a good win. I mean, knocking off Herndon by, I think it was about 7 points.
Yeah.
That's a real nice victory.
And beating Herndon in winning that game, this gives those young kids at Chantilly a lot of confidence. I think a lot of people have said Herndon and Westfield coming into the season were the clear-cut favorites to win that district. Now, Herndon we've seen has dropped a couple games last week, maybe in some people's minds fell off a little bit. So now all of a sudden you have an opportunity here, maybe with these kids having confidence, they can go in and possibly upset a Herndon, or pull an upset to get in the regional tournament, maybe even get into the district championship.
Is
game.
Herndon, and I speak to you as an honored alumnus of Herndon High School, is Herndon still in your top 3 in the region for the
No,
boys?
not right now. They're basically Scotty Reynolds and a bunch of support players right now. I know Gary Hall would like to have Nolan Gilly step up and be that legit second scorer. I think personally, Larry Benyon, he's a 6'7", maybe 6'6" junior. If he got some more touches, I think he could be effective. But it doesn't seem like they go to him enough. Every time I look at his box score, he's 10 or 11 points on 4 for 5 or 5 for 5 or 6 for 7 shooting. He shoots a very high percentage because he gets up, he elevates on his jump shot, and he's got a nice mid-range jumper, and he can work inside. Herndon, no, right now, in my opinion, is not one of the top 3 teams in this region.
Gotcha. Speaking of those mighty Hornets, they took out their aggressions on Jefferson 73-33, and as any Jefferson student can tell you, that adds up to 106.
That's right.
So,
and I mean, Jefferson was the team that knocked off Chantilly last week, so I mean that was kind of their upset, and Herndon's probably a little steamed from losing a couple games, so they really put it on the Colonials.
And Lake Braddock beating T.C. Williams is sort of an interesting score. This game, of course, is at T.C. Williams, which is never an easy place to play. But Lake Braddock has sort of become, and Brian Metris, the masters of knocking off T.C., whether it's in the regular season or the postseason or what have you. And it goes to show that it's not just the only scuttlebutt about this game that I heard from some people was maybe it was just he knew that Brian Metris knew how to beat Chavez Maybury when he was the coach at TC, but it kind of now spilled over. Braddock is an incredibly good post-passing team. We had Rich Sanders, our good friend at the game, and he told us that backdoor cuts were all over the place, that they were able to do a lot of things offensively against TC, and close game, good Patriot District game, but there you go.
This is a team that once the region tournament comes around, nobody's going to want to play. Lake Braddock probably should have beat Herndon in the region quarterfinals last year. Gave Herndon a good game this year. They've got some big wins to their credit already. So they're going to be, and especially if you look at Brian Metris, who might be the best coach in the northern region, they're going to be very dangerous.
And it's good to see them win in TC's home gym. I guess early we've seen some upsets in places where normally you wouldn't see. I mean, Herndon usually unbeatable at home, loses to Westfield by a wide margin. TC, loses here at home. I think Hayfield, lost the game early on at their home floor. So places where you are normally difficult to play, you're seeing some teams come in and have success.
And Tuesday night next week, you got the Mighty Bruins and the Mighty Hawks of Hayfield, which is always a fun game, a great rivalry, and some very spirited fan bases, those two teams.
Well, Brian Metris coaching against his old school.
Oh yeah.
So there's always there's always some high anxiety around that
And
game.
even though it's been a few years, they don't forget that little fact that he used to coach there either. Anyways, back to the scoreboard, folks. Lee knocks off McLean, 46-43 in overtime. This is Joey Lee's first
district win for Mike Harris's crew, and this is a McLean team that have been playing a little bit better recently. They beat Langley. Granted, Langley's a little bit down. They beat them in the rivalry game last week. So Lee has obviously has some growing to do as a team, but this is a good win for him.
Marshall knocks off Langley 59-47,
Hey.
continuing with the scores.
Yeah. This is a surprising Marshall team, and this is come Liberty District tournament time. Kevin Weirin's gang is playing very well. I think they could be a dangerous team.
This game right here was highly anticipated in the Liberty District, 57-56, a very tight one between South Lakes and Madison. And then you see Woodson knocking off Fairfax 54-50 to remain perfect in the Liberty District, which is a shock to a lot of people.
Perfect 15-0.
Yeah, overall, yeah.
And this is, when Nick Olivero got hurt during football season, so I think some people said, well, Woodson's going to struggle early on, but it's been, obviously quite to the contrary. They played very well.
And it's a great story because talking to Coach Mike Flugrath before the season, he's a guy who was really confident in what they were building at that school. And then all of a sudden last year, everything kind of fell off the rails, and then they started questioning whether or not the approach was right and questioning whether or not the tactics were right. And they just stuck with it. And this year, you see the fruits of their labor. You see these young players who took their lumps last year coming up and doing an incredibly good job this year.
In South Lakes, in that win over Madison, Julian Vaughn, the 6'8 sophomore, came back and hit a layup at the buzzer to tie the game and was fouled in the process. And with no time on the clock, sank the winning free throw to give the Seahawks the win. And this is just a game after Wendell Bird got his 400th win against McLean last Friday. So
congratulations
certainly
to
hats
him.
off to Coach Bird. 21st season, 400 wins, 6 region championships, 8 district championships in 3 different districts. So he's probably maybe outside of Charlie Thompson, the dean of the coaching ranks in the region.
Congratulations to Wendell, absolutely. West Springfield 64-48 over Robinson. And Westfield edges Oakton 50-48 in a pretty interesting.
Surprising that the game was that close.
Exactly. And then finally we got Yorktown knocking off Falls Church 60-45. That's a big win for Yorktown. They lost to W&L last Friday night at home to drop to 1-4 in the National District, and that is a team that should not be 1-4 in the National District, and maybe it just takes a win or two to get them back on the winning track, because they're a very talented team. And I know, talking to Coach Richard Vila after the game, he was not pleased to be 1-4 in the National after that first run through the district. Anyways, moving on to girls basketball scores from last week, we see that Edison just barely beat the spread, 60-16 against Stewart. Honestly, we don't know what the spread is. We don't. That was a joke, folks. Jefferson 61-42 over Herndon.
Stewart 6 points in the first half against Edison. And this is a game where Dorena Campbell only had 12 points for Edison, too.
Lake Braddock, that was actually 49-43. That was a much tighter game than we have it up there. But that was a good effort from the T.C. Williams Titans in that one. Lee over McLean in overtime. And then also Madison beat South Lakes 80-45. Marshall continues their winning ways, Joey. 57-40 over Langley.
The statesman Noel Klippenstein's done an excellent job with that team. Last week on Friday, beat Woodson for the first time since Woodson came into the Liberty District. Anna Stegg had 28 points, 11 rebounds, hit the 2 winning free throws with 10 seconds left. So Marshall is a legitimate contender in the Northern Region this year.
Yes.
This is the team that brought back every single letterman they had on the team last year, so a lot of experience across the board.
And that's good for Marshall, because Marshall doesn't have a lot of winning teams. So to have an elite team in a high profile sport like basketball is excellent for that school.
And also, they had a pretty successful year last year, and I was able to kind of see a couple of their games, and they do get a good amount of folks out to those games. They do a heck of a job getting inside the school and really getting kids excited, not only about the girls' team, but when the boys' team is up, that place is a very difficult place to play. The kids come out in a big way for those teams, and they win.
And especially in Liberty District games, when Madison comes over, it's kind of a cross-town rivalry. They're right down the street from each other, right behind us
Hey,
here
here
on
at the
123.
Vienna Inn.
There you go.
That's the Vienna Inn. All right, back to the old scoreboard. Woodson defeated Fairfax 50-47. I was at that game, and boy, oh boy, when Fairfax gets you in that place on a Tuesday night and there ain't nobody there and they're playing that kind of suffocating Nancy Melnick defense, they can keep a game close against anybody. They're a very, very good defensive team. They're 1-6 in the Liberty, but I wouldn't want to play them in the postseason. West Potomac 48-45 over Annandale, and West Springfield 62-43 over Robinson. That was a game where Springfield really started to look like Springfield again. They waxed the Rams in the second half of that game. That was a 22-20 lead at halftime, and then Westfield 49-48 over Oakton in a very interesting game, Jeff.
Yeah, I was at the game last night. It was a great game. It was tied at the end of each of the first 3 quarters. Jasmine Thomas scored 30 points for Oakton, but in the end, Jessica Honesty scored I think the game-winning basket with about 18 seconds left. So and she was coming back from a broken foot. She scored 16 points. So a nice win for Westfield. Those two are the top 2 teams in the Concord District. They're likely going to meet in the finals. So that's just the first of probably 2 or 3 more matchups for them.
I had an opportunity to talk to Fred Priester before that game. Asked him, obviously he and Pat Deegan go back a long ways from Deegan's days at Madison and then from Priester's days at McLean before he came over to Oakton. And asked him what the history was. And he said that it was very much in Deegan's favor. Because he said McLean beat Madison in 1989, but then went 7 years without beating them, playing them twice a year. So interesting that, a little tidbit there, but interesting that Deegan holds such a lopsided advantage, and this is just another example.
It's funny because Priester's Cougars beat them last year twice in the regular season, then lost a district title to Deegan's Bulldogs.
Absolutely. So. And one more score, the one you've all been waiting for, Yorktown 48-34 34 over Falls Church. Boys, we got some games coming up this week, and they're going to be exciting. Friday night, we've got our FSN picks for boys basketball to talk about, and let's get right to it. Annandale at Hayfield. You got to like Hayfield in that one, and hope they're not looking ahead to next week, which should be an interesting week for them. Edison Chantilly, a little inter-district action, and it should be a pretty good one with Chantilly as hot as they are, taking on a pretty good Edison team.
I'm assuming with the 7:45 game start, that's the second of a double header. Edison, Chantilly's a tough place to play. They always draw a good crowd. Edison's, the top team in the national district, so that should be a good game. Chantilly kind of up and down. They have a close game that they just won. So looks like they're going to be coming out on fire.
It's going to be tough, though, in the middle of your district schedule to get up for a non-district game. A lot of times you'll see coaches rest maybe some starters a little bit that have been playing a lot of minutes in a game like this.
Fairfax at South Lakes. How do you think the South Lakes post players will match up against that big old J.D. Skolnitsky?
Well, I had the opportunity to see Skolnitsky last week against Madison. I was very impressed. In fact, that was the FSN Game of the Week. I did the color commentary for it. So very, very impressed with him. But however, South Lakes got Julian Vaughn back on Tuesday, and they get J.P. DePasso back on Friday, so they're going to be at full strength. When South Lakes is at full strength, they're hands down, I believe, the best team in that district.
And you got a couple more games there. Braddock at Springfield's interesting. Springfield is one of the hotter teams in the region right now, and Braddock obviously is playing very well. And Marshall at McLean, another chance for the Statesmen to keep their winning ways going. Oakton at Herndon should be an interesting one, I would imagine.
Oakton always plays Herndon tough. Oakton's not ultra talented this year, but they always seem to play Herndon in kind of a low scoring game. Herndon's looking to kind of, I guess, gain some respect back. They've lost a little bit of steam over the course of this past couple of weeks.
Which might not be a bad thing, because what you've seen with Herndon in the past two regular seasons, 2 years ago with Ricky Lucas and crew, last year with Brad Farrell and Maso Hamilton and Scotty Reynolds, is they had great regular seasons, but then they fizzled come the postseason. So maybe losing those two games was a little bit of a wake-up call. It wasn't necessarily a bad thing for them.
And then also for our Gazette Packet readers, West Potomac at T.C. Williams, the Battle of Alexandria, as you were. And that should be a fun one as well. All right, girls basketball games coming up this weekend. An interesting slate of games. Obviously, you see the Chantilly Edison game. I guess it's not a doubleheader.
Because it isn't a doubleheader.
Well, it was a good guess on your part.
Darn.
Langley at Woodson, always a fun time when those two programs match up. And on the following page, you get your Mount Vernon at Yorktown. Obviously, that matchup is a little bit different than in years past. Kenny Farmer having moved on. Robinson comes off a loss at West Springfield, and a bad one. In fact, Coach T.J. Dade said after the game it was the worst they had played all season. And guess what? You get to play Pat Deegan on Friday. Isn't that fantastic to get back on track? And then so on and so on and so forth with the rest of the games there, folks.
TC, let's see if they can bounce back after the loss. They hung close with Lake Braddock, the Braddock team that hasn't lost a game this year. So TC Williams, despite the losing record, is always a tough team, very athletic team.
I agree with you, though. I mean, I guess it may be just the imbalance of the schedule or what have you, but it is sort of weird to have these non-district games stuck right as these teams are getting into their second round of games within the district. It must be very, very disorienting.
It is disorienting, and I can't understand why. It seems like they start the district schedule so early now, like the middle of December. A lot of these teams play two district games before they go away for the holidays. Back 5 years ago, they might play one. A lot of teams didn't play any district games until after the holidays, and then just played their district schedule straight through. So I think if you ask some coach, they would probably prefer to just do that.
It's just the nature of the beast when you have 8-team districts and 5-team districts. You only play each team twice, so there's going to be some intermixing there.
Do you think there's any team that kind of stands out in your mind as far as being a team that might have a tougher time the second time through the district than the first time through the district?
I think, and I hate to keep beating the horse with Herndon, but these teams have seen that outside of Scotty Reynolds, they're very limited offensively. So I think you're going to see some teams do some things on defense to try to offset him and try to slow him down a little bit. Teams have been doing it all year. The guy's still averaging 32 points a game. So he's going to find a way to score. But it's if you can limit him to 25 points a game, you have a very good chance of beating him.
You're going to find ways, people that are going to try to double team him, if not, double team him, try to shade him with a defender and force other guys like Larry Benyon and Noah Gully to kind of step up and I mean, if you're going to say, we're going to make Scotty Reynolds beat us, or we're going to make, Nolan Gilly or Larry, Benyon or some of these other guys beat us, it's a kind of an easy answer to say, make the other kids beat us.
Right.
I think another team is Woodson. If you look at them, they beat South Lakes when South Lakes was down a couple starters. They beat Madison when Madison wasn't what they are now. In my opinion, one of the hotter teams in the northern region. So I think Woodson has a tough time. The fact that they're going to have to face Madison and South Lakes again. South Lakes at full strength. Madison playing very well.
Something very interesting to look out for, I think, in the second half of the district schedule in the Patriot District on the girls' side. Robinson is in their last year in the Patriot before they move to the Concord next year. They have this group of girls has not beaten Lake Braddock before, and they haven't beaten West Springfield before, and they've lost to them both in the first go-around in the district. So you have to wonder, how much pressure is it going to be on them to go out there and maybe get that last gasp win against one of these programs in the second half of the schedule?
Yeah, it'll also be interesting to see some of these teams who have had some injuries in the first half. Jessica Honesty played her first game last night, of the season. She's going to be a key contributor for Westfield's girls. I know Julian Vaughn's missed some time for South Lakes. With some of these key contributors are coming back now and should be a big boost to some teams.
There you go. All right, boys, let's start wrapping things up here. I want to remind everybody that the FSN Cox 35 game of the week will be the Robinson Lady Rams at the Westfield Lady Bulldogs. That's right, they're the Bulldogs.
Unless something's changed in the last 24 hours.
Dramatic has happened, but they are the Bulldogs, we believe. And anytime Rams and Bulldogs fight, it's always a very animalistic affair. But that game is coming up this week, and next week here on the Fairfax Sports Report at the Vienna Inn, it'll be basketball, wrestling, swim dive, ice hockey, much more. Wednesdays at 10, Thursdays at 8, Fridays at 12:30 p.m. on Channel 10. And we will, like I said, be back here at the Vienna Inn on Maple Avenue 123 in Vienna. And please come see us if you get a chance on Wednesday. Fairfax Sports Network on the web, www.fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. Airtimes, tape orders, general information, balloons for the kids, underwriters. I want to thank Quality Care Ford Service Center, servicing all makes and models. 703-383-6299.
I think I saw some Fords, out stranded on the road today.
Well, they should go to the Quality Care Center for all their makes and models.
All makes and models, so they don't just have to be a Ford.
No, not at all. CCI Screen Printing for all of your screen printing needs, Joey. 703-978-0257. And, of course, thank you, Vienna Inn. Thank you for making life, putting a song in our heart, and
thank you for being close
hopefully
to work.
A chili dog in our belly. Maple Avenue, Vienna, 703-978-0257. Yeah, I got to tell you something right now. It was an adventure getting here on a Wednesday. It's Wednesday. The snow was falling. It literally took, we were right down the street in Tyson's. It took an hour to get here,
Well,
basically.
You're on the biggest, one lane going each way road, the most busy, one lane road in Northern Virginia, basically.
We're doing
123.
we're doing the car dodge and
it's heck. I was going to say hell, but I'll say heck. Thanks for watching the Fairfax Sports Report. Please join us next week. But I got to tell you something right now. If I see one more truck sit there spinning its wheels for an hour, okay?